Hello to you all once again, and welcome to episode 3 of We Need to Talk About ...
3 episodes. Back by, well, I'd like to say back by popular demand, but...
We have as fans, we have
a small elite following, I like to say. Yeah, we have the elite.
And we love you all.
We do indeed.
Well, we've mentioned, for today's episode, we've talked about this particular film in our last 2 episodes, and now it's finally time to give it the We Need to Talk About ... treatment. We've been to the 60s with Casino Royale, we travelled to the 70s with Zardos, and now it's time to pass around the crackers, because we've got some proper 80s cheese for you here.
It's Lifeforce time.
It is Lifeforce.
You have actually reviewed this film before, have you not?
Yes, it was only like a short review that I did of it, but that's when it was at one of the Leeds horror film festivals. But for this video, we're going to cover it in somewhat more detail and more depth, and we're also going to talk about the distribution company that Lifeforce came from.
Oh boy!
The infamous Cannon Film Group, yes. So, let's talk about the plot first of all. Astronauts from the British space programme find a giant spaceship, shaped like an artichoke for some reason, and discover within it a number of giant, desiccated, bat-like creatures, along with 3 perfectly preserved yet completely naked humanoid life forms. Oh yes, I should point out, this film has got excessive female nudity. The decision is made to bring these humanoids back to Earth, which leads to damn near apocalyptic results, as not only do they have some questionable morals about actually putting some damn clothes on, but they then also start sucking the life force out of people, reducing them to hideous, shrieking, mindless zombies that in turn seek out the life force of other people, and will actually explode into dust if they don't get to feed. This all sets the stage for plenty of excessive female nudity, fountains of blood, whirlpools of thunder, and some hilariously bad dialogue such as...
This woman is a masochist. An extreme masochist.
And...
Not at all. I'm a natural voyeur.
And that's only within one scene.
Despite appearances, this woman is a masochist. An extreme masochist. She wants me to force the name out of her. She wants me to hurt her. I can see the images in her mind. Do you want to stay? Otherwise, wait outside!
Not at all. I am a natural voyeur.
I should mention that the security guards point out that a naked woman is not going to be able to get out of this complex, then offer the same naked lady space vampire a nice biscuit to stop her from escaping. Yeah, that'll work. Lifeforce was originally offered to regular Cannon Films contributor Michael Winner, he of the Endless Death Wish movies. But then it ended up in the hands of Tobe Hooper. After the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hooper struggled to find the same commercial and critical acclaim. His follow-up, Eaten Alive, was not well received, and Hooper himself had walked off the film set after a disagreement with the producers. It took the TV movie of Stephen King's Salem's Lot to get him back on track as a director. Due to the nature of this being for TV, Hooper had to rein in the shocks and gore to be replaced with atmosphere and suggestion. It certainly worked, as he was then hired to direct Poltergeist, working from a story from Steven Spielberg, although there's still questions to this day about whether or not Spielberg took control of that film during the production. But it didn't matter, because having his name attached to the film certainly didn't do Hooper any harm. It was off the back of this film that Hooper was offered a free picture deal with Cannon, who was hoping that they'd be able to capture some of that same mainstream attention as what Poltergeist got.
Lifeforce is arguably the most successful of these 3 films that he made for Cannon. Hooper's woeful remake of Invaders from Mars and the sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 were critical and commercial flops, although they have since cultivated a really good cult following. Lifeforce started as Colin Wilson's novel The Space Vampires, with the author taking inspiration from the works of H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. This was then adapted into a screenplay written by Dan O'Bannon and David Jacobi. O'Bannon was already well versed in the science fiction horror genre as the writer of Alien, co-writer of John Carpenter's first film, Dark Star, and had also contributed to the special computer effects of a very small 1977 science fiction art house movie that you may have heard of, Star Wars.
Star Wars. Yes, I think I've heard of that. It was a very good film from what I remember. I can't understand why they didn't make any sequels.
Or prequels. Moving on. O'Bannon had also written and directed The Return of the Living Dead, another movie well known for its excessive female nudity and gore.
Not only to that, but Hooper himself contributed some story ideas, most notably the use of Halley's Comet. Now, Halley's Comet was perceived to be a harbinger of doom. Most notably, Halley's Comet actually appears in the Bayeux Tapestry as a sort of a harbinger of doom before poor old King Harold gets one in the eye.
Yeah, and also just to get a little bit more astrological, a little bit more, astrophysics and what have you. Halley's Comet was this film came out in 1985.
Yes.
Halley's Comet was next seen the year after, in 1986, and that's the last time that up until now. That's the last time we've seen Halley's Comet. So it's actually a year before Halley's Comet was passing through our solar system.
That's what I mean. That was part one of the reasons why Hooper decided to put that change into place, because Halley's Comet was due to pass by Earth the following year of the film's release.
Which is very, very interesting, actually. Just to go on even more of a slight tangent, because at the same time that the Churchill is up there, sort of landing in Halley's Comet and what have you, down here on Earth, the Cybermen are trying to basically alter the path of Halley's Comet. Sort of in Attack of the Cybermen.
It's all part of an extended universe.
It is indeed. It is indeed. They were trying to do that to weaken Earth's defences, so when the actual original cyber invasion from the 10th planet happens, then they would win.
Funnily enough, one of the guys in here, Peter Firth, who plays Colonel Kane, I actually do think when sort of watching him in this, he would have made an excellent Doctor Who.
He's a very, very good actor.
We're totally sort of digressing here.
Massively so.
So this was a change from the Churchill landing in an asteroid belt, which was in the book, and the time of the story was also then changed to the then present day. So not only did you have this awesome sort of pedigree going on behind the scenes in terms of the writing, but also the special effects as well.
The special effects were by John Dykstra, who had worked on the original television series for Battlestar Galactica, as well as Star Trek the Motion Picture, and the original Star Wars trilogy. And then, just to add in even more connections to Star Trek, throw in the not quite yet completely bald Patrick Stewart, who delivers a performance that not only contains more ham than the deli counter, but would also prepare him very, very well for his later assimilation into the Borg Collective.
And would feature his first ever on-screen kiss.
With a bloke.
With another man, Steve Railsback.
Furthermore, the soundtrack is a rousing, thunderous score written by Henry Mancini and performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. Yes, and also, did we mention that this has got excessive female nudity?
I don't think we did, no. So, you have a well-regarded genre writer, a well-regarded pioneering genre director, a legend in the special effects world, an amazing composer on the soundtrack, and a whopping $25 million budget to make the movie with. So how could this possibly go wrong?
Well, the film took an absolute critical and commercial mauling.
It didn't really help that it was released on the very same day as Ron Howard's science fiction movie, Cocoon. Now, that film had only cost $17.5 million to make, and it had a recognisable star in Steve Guttenberg on board. So it was more likely to make all its money back due to the film being family-friendly. Lifeforce was also facing stiff competition from the likes of The Goonies and Rambo, which didn't exactly help them further. Now, these days, the release of a movie will often be delayed by a studio to avoid clashing with another, bigger movie that might affect their ticket sales. Steven Spielberg's own recent film, Ready Player One, is a recent example of this, being delayed by several months to avoid clashing with the likes of Star Wars The Last Jedi and Black Panther, which could have cost them ticket sales. But this was Cannon Films, and Cannon was not your typical studio.
Cannon. The film studio that also brought us the likes of Masters of the Universe, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, That insane Hercules movie where Lou Ferrigno throws a bear into space, and multiple titles featuring Chuck Norris, Charles Bronson, Jean-Claude Van Damme, boatloads of ninjas, and all that fucking dancing. Even to this day, hearing and seeing the classic Canon logo and theme music brings up a load of memories. And not all of them good. No. Purchased in 1979 by Israeli cousins Manaheim Golan and Yoram Globus, the Go-Go Boys had forged themselves a career in Hollywood by making and releasing as many movies as possible in a single calendar year, no matter how lowbrow or bottom of the barrel these movies might have seemed. The record, if memory serves me correctly, is 43?
43 in a single calendar year.
43 movies
That
in a
is
single
insane.
calendar year. No one has ever done that. No one has ever done that before, no one has ever done that since. And there is a reason why nobody's ever done that before and nobody ever has done that since.
These days people tend to focus more on quality rather than quantity. Perhaps delaying the release of Lifeforce might have saved it from clashing with Cocoon and also headbutting with the likes of The Goonies and Rambo, but Golan and Globus didn't see it that way. They just wanted to get the movie finished and out in cinemas as soon as possible, maybe so they could then move on to the next movie, and the next, and the next.
At their peak, Canon was a huge company that produced an almost constant stream of successful cinema releases, as well as owning the international video rights for several classic film libraries, and even owning a chain of cinemas as well. Many of your childhood movies were probably watched in Canon cinemas. They were big money makers, and as it turned out, they were big money spenders as well.
Yes, and as it turns out, they were quite happy at the time to spend stupid amounts of money on an erotic sci-fi horror movie about a naked woman sucking out Patrick Stewart's soul and turning horny men into mindless shrieking zombies. Canon threw $25 million in the direction of Tobe Hooper to make Lifeforce. Let's just put that into some sort of perspective. 2 years previously, we had Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and that, with the amount of space battles to pay for, and of course William Shatner's huge ego to fuel, that had only cost $11.2 million to make. And then by the time that the Canon Group got hold of Superman 4, basically because Warner Bros. Didn't really know what to do with it after the disappointment of Superman 3 and Supergirl, sort of Canon swooped in and got hold of it. They then realised that once they got the license for Superman, that they were having serious cash flow problems, which shouldn't really come as a surprise, really, and they couldn't afford the same kind of special effects budget that the previous 3 movies had. $25 million on Lifeforce turned out to be considerably more than what Canon spent on Superman 4, whose original intended $36 million budget was slashed to $17 million. And it showed on screen too, not just with the special effects, but the fact that they then had to move filming location to Milton Keynes in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever been to Milton Keynes, but it doesn't really double as Metropolis.
I think, originally Superman 1, 2 and 3 was filmed in New York.
Yes.
I think.
Well, it certainly looks like it.
It certainly does look like it, but anyways, major metropolitan American city. Milton Keynes.
it's not the same,
No,
is it?
it's
Here's a
not.
picture of New York.
Yeah, here's Milton Keynes.
Here's Milton Keynes. It's not quite the same, really, is it? We could go off on a tangent on Superman 4 as well. I mean,
no, we really couldn't.
the villain, Nuclear Man, with his big blonde mullet and his sharp fingernails. I'll scratch your eyes out, dearie, you know. And there's that bit where Superman fixes the Great Wall of China by staring at it. You know, his red eye beams, his heat vision, but what basis do the blue eye beams work on? Is it imagination, perhaps? Had Superman looked into the future and seen Minecraft? And I could just read.
Although to be honest with you, that's I kind of think of that now as an interesting homage to 1950s, 1960s Superman stories, where basically Superman developed a new power every single issue for a specific problem.
But that time he could create a tiny miniature version of himself.
Yes. just don't ask why. We can just do it.
There's no tension at all where your character can just literally make up a power on the spot and go, right, that's me sorted. So despite having a $25 million budget for Lifeforce, that wasn't enough for the movie. The film went over schedule during production. Because of this, some important scenes were never shot. And the film was actually shut down at one point because the studio had simply run out of money. So if there's moments where the film feels like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense and seems a little incoherent at times, that's because there's scenes missing from it.
Who'd have thought?
You see, Cannon decided at the last minute to change the name of the film to Lifeforce because they felt that that was a much more striking title and it would allow Cannon to get away from their reputation of putting out genre B movies. Now, whilst the film may no longer have a B movie title, it is still very much a B movie from beginning to end. From its basic premise of vampires in space, to the zombies wandering around, to the vast amounts of excessive female nudity, to the concluding moments where Peter Firth is stabbing a giant bat alien in the chest with an iron sword, it is an extremely bizarre film. Hooper, to his credit, knows he's making a bizarre film, and so he fills it with plenty of exploding bodies, flashing lights, copious amounts of blood and gore, and the same kind of warped, twisted sense of humour that he had in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist. Cannon Films certainly had high expectations for Lifeforce and made huge announcements stating that this was going to be the cinematic sci-fi event of the 80s. But then again, that's nothing new for Cannon. They were renowned for over-promoting movies that did not live up to expectations. They even went so far as to describe Masters of the Universe as the Star Wars of the 80s. It wasn't. It really wasn't. Oh. Although it probably explains why Skeletor appears to have picked up a load of stormtroopers from somewhere.
Well, yes. I can clearly remember feeling very, very let down by that film.
Masters of the Universe. Yeah. Even as a kid, I sort of thought, well, the cartoon had such a well-known theme song. You know, why didn't we get a big orchestral version of that rather than what we got on the soundtrack, which sounded like they'd basically taken a bit of Superman and a bit of Star Wars and mashed it together. Yeah. What was wrong with doing a big orchestral version of the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon?
That certainly would have. That certainly would have worked. But,
at no point is He-Man Prince Adam. He's He-Man throughout the entire film.
He-Man.
I mean, we could probably go off on a completely separate tangent about Masters of the Universe. So let's
and how bad it is.
And how bad it is. But you don't need to tell us that. I mean, even Dolph Lundgren to this day, although he does have fond memories of sort of going, well, yes, I was He-Man. He did also feel rather foolish at times making the film, especially when he was stripped down from his furry pants and the guy was whipping him while Skeletor sort of looked on going, that was sinister, that. What was all that about?
The worst thing about it was that obviously the Skeletor, in the cartoon Skeletor is actually a skeleton, so they couldn't actually do that. I think it would probably be done better these days with better visual effects and what have you. But it's quite clearly Frank Langella in a mask.
Yeah.
But he couldn't,
doing his very best as well.
He couldn't act in the mask though. That's the problem.
He gave it his all though, bless him.
I mean, the masks made for 1970s Doctor Who look cutting edge.
Yes, compared to that.
And in some of the masks that they created for that, you know, they couldn't even move the jaw of the mask, so that the actor inside couldn't actually pop a blade half like that. And just mental. But that's Masters of the Universe. That's probably going to be another episode at some point.
God, don't put me through that again.
Lifeforce has since become a bit of a cult favourite after it was released on VHS, mainly because you could hit the pause button during the nudie bits. But the true legacy of the film is that its massive financial failure helped doom the futures of both Cannon Films and also Tobe Hooper. After his 3-film deal with Cannon had ended, Hooper continued to make features, work steadily in television. He's one of the original 10 masters of horror, contributing 2 stories across both series. And he's rightly regarded as one of the pioneers of the modern horror genre. Really people talk about Masters of Horror. Masters of Horror, the original sort of Masters of Horror, was, I can't remember who started it, but it was a group of friends, Tobe Hooper, John Landis, John Carpenter, Guillermo del Toro, and a few others.
So a who's who of horror movie-making talents.
Just getting together, going to a restaurant, and having a lovely meal with friends and just talking. And apparently the name Masters of Horror came from I think on the next table somebody was having their birthday party or something like that, and they were noticing who was there and what have you. They were obviously film fans. There was people that were there, and Guillermo del Toro, a card was passed around or something like that, and Guillermo del Toro had written down or had said to the person, "Happy birthday from the Masters of Horror." Which is a lovely thing, to be honest with you. And so from that, the germ of the idea happened that over the course of 2 television series, each director would produce a story, and Toby Hooper produced 2 over 1 for each series. And the group was open to new people. Dario Argento came in, and a few various other people came in as well. Really, really well regarded 2 TV series. Some of the horror in it's absolutely brilliant. It's all within kind of the types of stories that they did. The John Carpenter one's really, really good.
And he certainly does deserve to be regarded in that sort of legendary status, does Toby Hooper. Now, unfortunately, he passed away last year, August 26, 2017, at the age of 74. Poor old Toby didn't even get a mention this year in the Oscars video package that they do for the sort of in memoriam. But fans of his work certainly noticed, and they took to Twitter and other sort of social media to voice their outrage. So even though the Academy Film Awards sort of forgot about him,
we certainly didn't.
We certainly didn't. Hooper's fans certainly didn't, and he'll certainly be well remembered as one of the pioneers of the modern horror genre.
Lifeforce, though, owes a large debt to the works of Nigel Neal. For those that don't know, Neal was a British television and radio writer. He was the first writer to realise that, as a writer, he could do a lot more on television than radio, especially at the time when most writers on staff and freelance within the BBC saw television as inferior to radio. So this is kind of the back end of the 1940s going into the 1950s. In a very real sense, Neal is the father of modern television science fiction in the UK. He's one of the pioneers of TV drama, full stop. Without Neal, we would not have Doctor Who, we would not have Blake Seven. He is that important of a writer. And it all started with Quatermass. Between 1953 and 1959, 3 Quatermass series were produced. The first, the Quatermass Experiment, told of Britain's first manned spaceflight spearheaded by the British Experimental Rocket Group, headed by Professor Bernard Quatermass. 3 astronauts go into space, only 1 makes it back, and he is not alone. Even from that very, very brief description, you can see parallels between the Quatermass Experiment and Lifeforce, even down to the climax of both stories. The Quatermass Experiment ends at Westminster Abbey, Lifeforce ends at St Paul's. The film version of Quatermass and the Pit is really the blueprint for Hooper's final scenes in Lifeforce, of a London in the middle of Armageddon, its people going mad, beating each other up and looting the capital.
Have England been knocked out of the World Cup again? Lifeforce takes the idea of Quatermass and the Pit and cranks it up by several notches, increasing the amount of violence and destruction and the sexually powerful allure of the invading alien forces. But at a time when the AIDS hysteria was approaching its height, the idea of a sexually transmitted plague certainly offered ample opportunity to use in a horror movie.
Although probably not quite as batshit insane as the one in this offering.
So,
yes,
we have to go to that question. What have we watched here?
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing that Toby Hooper was impressed by was how seriously the mostly British cast took it. I mean, some people would probably look at this material and go, this is absolutely ridiculous, I'm not going to take it seriously.
But I think, is that due to the fact that, I don't think that this is, this means that sort of English actors take the craft and their story more seriously, or they're more professional, or whatever. I don't think it's down to that. I do think it is down to, I think, the rich sort of back catalogue of Hammer films and Hammer horror films. When you look at the Hammer horror films now, even probably sort of back when they were being released, they are utterly insane. But if you can see sort of the likes of Sir Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing taking sort of their roles as Dracula and Van Helsing and Frankenstein and what have you seriously, then there is that. But what we have actually watched is genuinely a really, really good piece of science fiction horror.
Well, to be honest, it's the highest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes that we've reviewed so far. Zardos only got 45%,
Yeah.
which I thought was
Overly high.
Casino Royale scored 28%,
Which surprised me they actually got 28%.
and this film scored 62%, so it's actually the highest rated film that we've looked at on the show so far, and possibly the highest rated canon film as well.
I mean, if you have a look at it as well, I mean, we're talking sort of 1980 science fiction horror. If we add in, if we go sort of a year either way, a year into the 70s, in 1979. 1979 we had Alien. We had John Carpenter's The Thing in 1982.
Yes.
We have this in 1985. We could probably sort of include The Terminator in that as well.
Yes.
So we're talking about some really, really good science fiction films. Science fiction horror films, yes, but really, really good science fiction films. Why did this one get the battering though? Because I don't think it looks massively dated.
No, I mean the special effects in particular, like with the zombies, the one that sort of, the one that sits up, and
the
moves
physical
around.
effects.
The person who did that, Kenny Dykstra, I mean, obviously people remember Yoda. I bet you've actually got a picture there. People remember Yoda, but Kenny Dykstra actually said that is the best work that he ever did.
Now, is this so this picture here? If you can see it, that's fine. This is the zombie. This is the physical effects, because obviously there was, you know, CGI was not as prevalent at the time. But looking at that, is that any different from what Stan Winston did? For
No.
Probably more for The Thing.
Yes, with the
pneumatics and what have you.
tentacles.
So, yeah, you know, that's physical effects done brilliantly, and that's why it's always better to, you know, if you actually have the physical effect there as you're acting, you have something to act against.
Well, that's it. You're not looking at a tennis ball on a bit of a stick and saying, right, act towards that.
Yeah,
you see something like that, you walk onto a film set and say, right, you've got to interact with that. It's like, fucking hell. You don't need to do that much acting. This thing looks bloody scary.
It's like when William Friedkin made The Exorcist. Physical effects all done there in one room. You know, I don't want to do this unless I can actually do it. If you think about Alien, we've talked about Alien, but we'll talk a little bit more about Alien. The rest of the cast weren't told what was going to happen to John Hurt, and John Hurt only found out on that morning when he was getting sorted out for the chest burster and what have you.
That must have been an interesting morning. So, what's going to happen to me? Oh, well, basically, John.
Right, John. What we're going to do here is, and you know, and so when the rest of the cast is reacting to that, they are reacting to it live in real time. They didn't know that it was happening, and it's like that. It is genuinely a very, very, very good film, and I can never understand why it got the panning that it did. I mean, I can and I can't.
It is crazy at times, and you sort of watch this, and it is one of those films where when it finishes, it's like, whoa, what have I just watched there? And again, being released at the same time as Cocoon and being out at the same time as The Goonies and Rambo probably didn't do it a lot of favours. But the people that's in the film, they're giving it all. I mean, Peter Firth as Colin Kane, he's absolutely acting his socks off. He's probably better known after being in the TV show Spooks. Steve Railsback, he'd previously been Charlie Manson in a movie, so this was like his first chance to sort of appear in a science fiction film. So he's absolutely relishing it. He's like the one American in all these British actors, but he
certainly gives him it all, and he is actually a really good actor.
But the fact that he was rolling around with Matilda May, and I mean, he was obviously very professional about the whole thing.
Oh yes,
Matilda May, I cannot praise this young lady enough. She was only 19 at the time. She couldn't speak English. She's actually French, and she didn't really want to do the nudity scenes. Again, this is something else that came from the insane man that is Mahanam Golan, who said, "I want the space vampire lady to be naked throughout the entire film."
Yeah.
Hundreds of women auditioned for the part, but didn't want to do it because of the excessive amount of nudity. Matilda May was eventually convinced by her agent that this would be a big break for her.
It wasn't.
It
really wasn't.
I mean, she still has a bigger success over in France. So Matilda May had a background in ballet, which came in very useful for this because it makes her come across. She's obviously this beautiful naked woman walking around, but the way that she walks around, the whole body language makes you sort of realise, hang on, there's something not quite right.
Something otherworldly
about this woman.
Yeah.
She comes across as like a female Terminator. She's like beautiful, but somewhat inhuman. And as I said, she didn't speak English at all, but she had a lot of people on set who probably felt sorry for her because she spent most of the time naked, who would help her speak English. And by the end of the film, she could speak English quite well.
I think that there would have been, because it was set in Britain, obviously British cast and everything, I think they would genuinely look after her. I sincerely hope that this was the case, but
A young 19-year-old girl, naked for most of the thing.
Can't speak English.
It's like, look, I feel sorry for her. Let's look after her.
And again, I think we've touched upon this, probably more so in Zardoz, and we probably made light of it in Zardoz. We're not going to make a light of it here. This would never happen now.
Not a chance.
Never happen.
Not a chance. You'd probably have it where she was wearing like an all-body suit that was made to look like she was naked, like Mystique in the recent X-Men movies, but never walking around, boobs out, pubic hair clearly on display.
Absolutely.
Not a chance.
Never. Not in a major Hollywood movie, because despite what we may say about canon, they were seen as global players, basically within movies.
This certainly won't be the last time that Matilda May would have her boobs out on display. Though I've seen in the French film The Tit and the Moon, which is about a little boy that falls in love with a tit and goes off to sort of find a tit of his own.
We're never reviewing that film.
Which is a film that could only be made in France.
We're never reviewing that film, David. Not doing it.
Speaking of other films that we're probably never ever going to touch,
No.
Mahanam Golan.
No.
You see, Mahanam Golan was content not to be just a producer. He wanted to be a director as well.
Oh, well, he didn't just want to be a director. He was a director. He was at the time more known as a director in his native Israel.
Yeah.
He directed Delta Force.
Yes, one of the Chuck Norris movies.
And he went on to direct other films as well, none of which we are not, under any circumstances, ever doing a review of The Apple. We are not doing it.
Just to give you an idea of how bad this is, The Apple...
Oh no, don't you dare put a clip of The Apple in this review.
I'm coming for you. Feel me coming for you.
You bastard.
So clearly The Apple is a musical of some kind.
It's a musical of the story of creation of Adam and Eve.
That's right, but turned into some other thing that's going off. Now then, the audience at the sort of test screening were given the soundtrack, vinyl soundtrack, as a free gift upon going into the cinema. The film was so bad, the audience actually threw the soundtrack at the screen, damaging it as a result.
However, getting back to Lifeforce and canon.
So, it's a film that starts off, let's just bring it up here.
Yep.
So it starts off as a sci-fi movie about aliens.
Yes.
Then it becomes a seductive vampire movie.
Yes.
By the end of the running time, it's turned into a fucking zombie apocalypse film. And then at some point when they're trying to find out where the Space Lady Vampire is, it's almost like a detective crime thriller.
It does actually cross quite a lot of genres, really.
Yeah. It's all over the place, is this?
But it's still sort of, I hate to say this, but it's still kind of logical for the story.
It still does make sense. It still does make sense.
It still does make sense, which, considering sort of the previous film that we reviewed, just Casino Royale and also Zardoz, none of those made sense. And we're not coherent in any way, shape or form. Put that apple down. We are not doing the apple. Getting this out there, widely available from Lifeforce. He's on the streaming service.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. What we've shown you here, this is the Arrow release of Lifeforce. Once again, Arrow knocking it out of the park with this one. This is the UK version.
Well, I think it contains both cuts, doesn't it?
It does.
Because,
Oh yes, there's an international and a theatrical cut.
Now, the international version is on for sort of 2 hours, which is absolutely fantastic, and it features the aforementioned soundtrack with the London Symphony Orchestra.
Yes.
And Gollum and Globus decided that film, at 2 hours long, was far too much for an American audience, so it was chopped down to an hour and a half. A lot of the stuff with the Churchill at the beginning was cut out or condensed down, so it was almost like they were like rushing to get to
the plot, basically.
And they brought in, even though they already had Harry Manfredi doing the soundtrack bit, they then brought in Michael Kamen in as well.
Yes.
To sort of do some bits. Now, Kamen's got much more of a horror theme to it, subdued and much more creepy and spooky, much more horror-based. And when you've got the two of them trying to sort of bounce off each other, it's such a massive change in pitch that it doesn't really work. So if you've only ever seen the US theatrical cut, it is the international version that you do need to check out.
Yeah. And I think with that,
To the pub.
I'm going to hit him now. So, Zardos will give 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. With
Zardos.
Casino Royale, you somewhat controversially gave it the Northwest thumb. Cumbria represents, and
Yeah,
I gave it a thumbs up because it made me laugh.
Yeah.
So I cannot give Lifeforce a thumbs up. I mean, it scored higher on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
And it has to be argued, out of the 3 films we've watched so far, Lifeforce is the best one out of the 3.
Yes.
It's still insane, it's still bonkers, which kind of sort of follows the theme that we've been covering here on the show.
Basically, we review bonkers films that nobody else likes, and only we like them, to be honest with you.
Crazy films for crazy people. All the credit in the world goes to the cast and crew. They obviously got on well with each other. Even years later, Patrick Stewart says that Toby Hooper was one of his favourite directors to work with. And they all looked after Matilda May, they looked after the poor lass, they taught her how to speak English.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you would, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? I just want to like put a coat round her and make her a cup of tea and what have you. You know?
Exactly, and just say, don't worry about it, it'll be fine, we'll get through this, it'll be fine. The premise of it is fantastic. It is an old premise, to be fair. You know, alien invasion, you know, we go to space, we bring something back that's not necessarily a good thing. You know, there are the links, the homages to Quatermass, and probably a thousand other science fiction tropes in there as well as the zombies, the vampires, and various other bits and pieces as well.
There's also a few comparisons to the new Mummy film with Tom Cruise, isn't it, in which they find a woman, you know, of unusual origin, bring it back to London,
Because of course that's a great idea.
and then all hell breaks loose, and it's up to our hero, who has that strange spiritual connection to the female character.
That's very good,
That
yes.
has to save the day.
However,
Given the
new-
choice though between watching this new Mummy film and watching Lifeforce, I would rather watch Lifeforce.
Same here. Because then you don't have Russell Crowe murdering an English accent and
Or Tom Cruise just being
Tom Cruise.
fucking hell. Although Brendan Fraser any day.
I have to give this a thumbs up. I'm sorry, I have to give it a thumbs up. I like it. I really genuinely like it. And I think sort of in the main review we did mention sort of aliens. We mentioned John Carpenter's The Thing. I think we mentioned Terminator as well. It fits in very, very well with that science fiction horror genre.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably more in particular with Alien and The Thing, to be honest with you, than the Terminator.
you can see how far special effects have come, both
Yes.
both computer special effects and practical special effects.
Yes.
You can see how far they've come along in the 80s.
But looking at it now, I think, okay, I can see why this probably didn't perform as well, or why it wasn't as well regarded. But actually, when you look at what's on the screen and what you're watching and the story of it, I think it's certainly probably the most coherent plotline that we've actually reviewed so far.
It is very much a lost classic, and it is definitely worth picking up on the Blu-ray or even just sort of streaming it on Netflix. Give it a go. It really...
So the Blu-ray that was the Arrow release. If you are based in the UK, there is a couple of extras on that don't exist on the disc in other territories and what have you. So please try and track that down.
Pick up the Arrow version, yeah.
The Arrow version.
They should be paying us for saying this.
Well, they really should.
Arrow, get in touch. Please. Social media stuff's at the end of the video.
Yeah, you know.
Pay me. and him as well.
Just give me free DVD. Just give me free Blu-rays.
It just pays in Blu-rays, yeah.
Blu-rays. I mean, that'll be great.
Shameless plug.
I think we've done it twice now. We would have done it 3 times, but you haven't done a Casino Royale one. Do a Casino Royale one. We'll go back. We'll do an insert into the original review where we plug that.
We've come to the same pub for the last 3
true.
videos.
They should be paying.
They should be paying us, yeah. Right.
This is nice, by the way.
This is very nice. Right, okay, well you've given it a thumbs
I'm giving
up.
it a thumbs up.
I have to do the same because
Really, genuinely do.
I gave Casino Royale a thumbs up, and it would be sacrilege if I didn't give this a thumbs up as well.
It would.
So there we go. There's our 2 thumbs up there
thumbs up time.
for Lifeforce. So
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to be reviewing next. We've got lots of ideas that we keep sort of shooting back and forth.
Yeah.
But stay subscribed to this channel. Follow the Facebook and the Twitter feeds, and you'll be able to sort of keep updated with what's going on. But until next time,
This will be going. You know, you'll be sort of putting out sort of
updates.
or warnings when it goes live. Small warnings, to be honest with you.
But until next time, I am the Big Daddy D.
I am forever Luke Murphy.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, everybody.
And we will see you for the next episode of We Need to Talk About... Goodbye.
Cue music from the Apple.
Magic apple, mystery apple, take a little ride. Let me be your guide through the apple paradise. Juju apple, voodoo apple, take a little bite. Spend a splendid night in our garden of delight. It's a natural desire. Meet an actual vampire. Let the apple set your soul on fire, fire, fire. You'll be hypnotized and you'll be demonized, but you'll be paralyzed, so you'll be victimized. You're fascinated, captivated, losing your mind when we cast the apple eye on you. Holy apple, sacred apple.